How's it going, folks? I am super excited today to re-release the Living on Dividends Google Sheets 2.0. I put in a lot of work into it, and now we can account for return of capital and taxes and map them out for, year after year after year after year. So I'm super excited to share with you this Google Sheets. It will be available via the Patreon, and let's just jump right into it. All right, folks. So this living off dividends calculator, it's a Google Sheets and it's going to be available via paid Patreon members. You can also buy it on a one-off basis. So I'll leave the link in the description below for this Google Sheets. And it's a really exciting Google Sheets. I think it's going to really help us prepare for living on dividends through these covered call funds. And so let's jump right into it. All right. So first and foremost, when it comes to living on dividends, the first thing you need to understand is how much are you spending per month and what is your annual total spend. All right. So what we're going to do on tab one, and you can see each tab has steps. Step number one is mapping out your annual expenses. Okay, guys. So how much are you paying for rent or your housing costs, right? And for here, we put 2,500. Transportation, food, health insurance, personal lifestyle, home goods, miscellaneous, entertainment, and travel. Now you can add in other categories, you can add other fields. This is all adjustable if we want to adjust this based on our situation. Everything in the Google Sheets will be adjustable. For now, our monthly total expenditure is $5,400 for an annual total of $64,000. Again, if you have other categories that I'm missing here, feel free to put it in. Maybe it's education, maybe it's family expenses, whatever the case may be. You guys know your expenses better than, of course, I do. But when it comes to really in general, when it comes to financial literacy and financial planning, one of the best things you can do is understand your expenses and map out, your income versus your expenses and ensuring that you are cash flowing every month. But in the case that you want financial freedom in the sense that you don't want to work anymore, you want to build a plan where I understand my expenses and I want to use these asset bearing income vehicles to supplement my lifestyle and ensure that I don't have to work a normal 9 to 5 job. This Google Sheets will help us get there. And again, step number one is going to be mapping out those expenses. So once those expenses have been sorted out. Once they've been all sorted out, the next thing we're going to do is map out our investments and looking at our year one cash flow. All right. So we want to look at year one cash flow with the investments. Now, I want to call out that I built two sheets for this. If one sheet is going to account for taxes, if you are investing in covered call products that provide 100% return of capital. And for the most part, a lot of the ETFs that we talk about on this channel, a lot of them pretty much are 100% return of capital. Now, you might have other investments that aren't 100% return of capital. And so for those, I built a separate sheet. So to account for an assumed ordinary tax rate or other tax rate based on the assets that you invested in. But for now, we want to just honor the fact that the investments that we're working on have 100% return of capital. So let's focus on that example. And maybe another example I'll do where we're focused on other assets, other ETFs that have different return of capital structures. Anyways, all right. So what we want to do now is plan our investments according to our expenses. All right. So the required monthly income or expenses that we have to achieve, and that was pulled right from the other sheet, is we have to match $5,400 to match our expense ratio. So we need at least 5,400 because we're spending 5,400, and truly we want a little bit of a buffer, anyways. We don't want to just be right at 5,400. We probably want $500 buffer, $1,000 buffer, and start building up maybe a rainy day fund, an emergency fund, a separate one, or reinvest the cash flow. All right. So the second piece is the amount to invest. So in this case, we're going to invest 500K, and this is adjustable, guys. We can go to 350K, we can go to 300K. That's 3 million. And we don't want that. We can go to 300K. This is all adjustable. But the example that we have put out here, 500K is that right number, the sweet spot. And really at 500K, it's great to see that at 500K, we can effectively live on these dividends and continue to live over time. And I'll share what that means in a second. But to do so, we want to ensure that a portion of our investments are being dripped. And what is drip? Well, that is dividend reinvestment. We want to reinvest a portion of the planned investments back into the investment, reinvest a portion of the dividends back in so that we can continue to yield more income over time and match inflation, which we will see 2 to 3%, maybe 4% inflation as the years go by. So we need to ensure that we have a drip allocation to these funds. All right, guys, drip allocation to these funds. All right, so the next piece up is going to be the investments I've selected for the fund. So I've selected a variety of really high income and quality investments as part of this plan. And those investments are QQQI, which is the NASDAQ 100 NEOS ETF, high income ETF, and that yields 14%. SPY-I, which is the S&P 500 income ETF, and that yields 11%. BTCI, which yields in and around 26%. T-SPY, which is another flavor of a SPY income ETF, and that yields 14% about, and QDVO, which is about 8 to 9%. It fluctuates, and that is going to be another high-tech grower, but also allows us to get a great yield as well. And you can change your percentages here. You know, if you want to change up your percentages, this of course needs to match 100%, but you can change up your percentages as you see fit, and adjust this as you see fit. This you want to keep the same. And then, as I said before, the assumed tax rate in this case, the initial tax rate on the income is going to be 100% return of capital. And you will see in our future Google Sheet what's called step 3, how we account for return of capital. This doesn't mean that we won't account for taxes entirely. We will account for taxes, but we want to first look at what return of capital will do, and how that will help our cause. All right, so the annual income in year one off a 500K investment, the annual income on that is going to be 84K, which is amazing, guys. The yield, the average yield for this account, this portfolio is almost 17%. Of the 84K, we're going to reinvest about 17,000 of it. And again, as I mentioned, you can adjust this reinvestment amount. All right, you can adjust the reinvestment amount. Now look here, the monthly income, right, is going to be 5,600, and that is based on that is based on the portion of living income that we've allocated, right? So that's going to be, if it's 20% dripped, that means we have 80% of this annual income left to utilize. Right, and that's what the monthly living income is, and the living income, that's 80% of this, and that gives us 67,000 of the 84K. Again, we're reinvesting 17,000, and monthly we have 5,600. Right, divide this by 12, we get to 5,600, and so with that, in year one, right, and accounting for ROC, which is, you effectively for year one, you won't have tax on your income because it's paid to you in return of capital. And with return of capital, we will be reducing our cost basis. And again, I'll show you what that means on the next tab. But with the monthly income in year one, we are generating 5,600. Our monthly expenses are 5,400. So we have a net cash flow of $200. That's great, guys. That's phenomenal. Now, if you want to be reinvesting more each month, and really each year, let's say you bring this to 25%, you're going to notice that our cash flow here gets weaker, right? So we're actually at a negative monthly cash flow. So with the drip percentage, you can only drip. The recommendation is only drip to the point where you're still cash flowing. The recommendation is only drip until when you're cash flowing. So we want to bring that back to at least just maximum 20%. And that will be a healthy amount of drip. You'll see that the compounding impacts of even 20% of this total income, what that 17K will do for us. All right, so this is the lens, and we're looking at again that year one portfolio breakdown, right? We have our monthly living income that we've mapped out. We have our investments that we've mapped out. We have our expected yield we've mapped out, and we've evaluated our cash flow. So right then and there, like this should maybe right here, we could even stop and say, hey, this is amazing. I've mapped out my expenses, I've mapped out my portfolio, and now we've hit our monthly cash flow. We've hit a positive monthly cash flow. And you're right then and there, you're already at a great position if you've planned this out and the cash flow is positive for you. You're in a great position. And just keep in mind, there is a lot of risk with these assets. Nothing here is guaranteed. The yields do fluctuate, but we have seen some great consistency, especially with these ones, as they've been in market for a couple of years now. Those yields have been firm, and so we can start forecasting these types of portfolios and this type of living on your dividend plan. But this is year one, and we want to future-proof ourselves for the future, guys, right? And accounting for taxes, accounting for inflation, and so accounting for those two things, we want to future-proof ourselves. So I'm super excited to present to you guys step 3 of this portfolio, right? Step 3, all right? And with this, step 3 is going to be looking at, again, future-proofing ourselves, understanding how return of capital will work for us, and looking at what our final tax bill will be if we were to sell this in 20 years, and our final total performance with this type of structure. All right. And so to start off with step 3, you're going to use an initial investment amount, and that's the one we're going to take from. We're going to grab the initial investment amount from here, right? We said the initial investment amount was that, right? 500K. We're going to expect an annual return here. And again, this is adjustable, but because these are, again, not really, really great NAV growers, they're NAV stable and NAV growing, but they're not amazing NAV growers like the underlying asset like QQQ would be. So we're going to just say 2% here for the total annual return on the NAV. And then the dividend yield is something we took from here. All right, so that's 16.8% is what we took here. And that is a really high dividend yield, no doubt about it. So if you want to adjust that, feel free to adjust it. I've also added the drip percentage like we have here of 20% of the income we will drip or reinvest back into the asset. And I'm assuming 2% inflation on our expenses. We have your return of capital rate. All right, now return of capital, again, is 100%. So these assets, QQQI, SPY, BTCI, they have 100% return of capital. So leave that as that. But maybe some other assets have 50% return of capital, or sometimes they do fluctuate. But for generally speaking, the NEOS funds and a lot of these new funds have 100% return of capital. All right. And then once our cost basis depletes, right? So eventually, with return of capital, what's going to happen is you are going to be reducing your cost basis from paying down from the dividends that are treated as return of capital. So it's going to reduce your cost basis. Eventually, your cost basis will be at 0, and then you'll have to pay taxes on that income. And so we have here the ordinary tax rate of 15%, and you can adjust this again as you see fit. Right now, standard rate is about 15% on income. So I'm going to leave it as 15%. And that expenses is something that we also pulled from the other sheet. So this is the scenario we've built. All right. And you could see we've now mapped this plan out for a 20-year period. So our starting value is 500K. Our cost basis remaining, because it's exactly the same as the starting value, is 500K. We have 84K, and dividends yielded through this plan was 17% dividend yield. And right off the bat, because our ROC percentage is 100%, 100% of the ROC, 100% of the dividends is going to equal 84K, right? So we have $0 in taxable year one dividends. 84K will be all return of capital, and that's going to be reducing our cost basis, and you'll see what happens. We're going to reinvest 17K back in, right? We have 20% drip percentage, so 17K will be reinvested, and we're going to withdraw to live on. We're going to withdraw 67,000 to live on, and our expenses are 64K still, and then we're going to adjust for the inflation for year two and beyond. Plus, we have a small growth. We have a small capital appreciation, so 10K. And so our end value is 527,000. All right. And that's coming from the growth plus the income, Okay. And the income that we're reinvesting, right? So we're going to take some off the table, some of the income, right? So that's not going to account for the end value. That's not going to be added to the end value. What's going to be added to the end value is our growth percentage, the growth value plus the reinvested dividends. All right. And that gets us 527,000. And your year one cash flow, that is the dividends that you've taken out to live on minus your expenses. And that gives us 2,400. So you're cash flowing even in year one with $2,400. All right, so now let's look at what happened in year two. So our starting value is 527,000, and that was the end value of year one. Now you can see that our cost basis remaining, right? Our cost base remaining has decreased to 432,000, right? Our initial cost basis was 500K, and we brought down the cost basis to 432,000 because we reduced our cost basis by 84K as a result of year one's 84K payout via dividend, right? So that's reducing it, but we've also increased our cost basis slightly based on the reinvested dividends, right? So because you're reinvesting your dividends, all right, you're going to now increase your cost basis. So we're going to account for the reinvested dividends, and that's going to give us a little bit more of a buffer each year, because this calculator, the benefit is that it's not only accounting for the reduction in your cost basis from the initial dividend, but it adds back the reinvested dividend as new cost basis. And there's going to be some nuance with this in actual reality, but this is a simulation. But that's the power of this calculator. It's going to help you both understand how many years you have of return of capital. Plus, it'll show you how we can increase your cost basis with the reinvested dividends. So 432,000 is left for your cost basis after year two. And now you can see your dividends are growing to 88K because our value is going up, our yield is staying the same. We're reinvesting more dividends now, right? Because our initial balance is stronger now, and we have still a great yield, so we're able to withdraw more to live on. And now we're adjusting for inflation, right? 2 to 3% a year. I think it's 2% I have. So now your expenses do go up, but your dividends are still going up as well. Your growth is going up, and your end value is, in this case, 555K. And we've simulated that now year after year after year after year. And so you can see here that it takes about, look at this, until you've fully depleted your return of capital, right? Until you fully depleted it, it takes about 16 years to fully deplete it. That being said, at some point after year 7, it'll come to a point where you have a split bag, where a portion of your dividends are going to become taxable, okay, and a portion are going to become a return of capital, right? In this case, in year 7, we have 37,000 that are still available for return of capital, and now 77,000 that will be taxable dividends. And I've even accounted for now at this point, once you hit the point where you're getting taxable dividends, the calculator is now going to account for those taxes in the withdrawn dividends and the reinvested dividends here. Okay, it's going to down draw. It's going to reduce the amount of available reinvested dividends you have, and the available withdrawn dividends as a result of that 15% tax that we had set up here. Okay. So it accounts for that 15% tax rate once the taxable dividends comes into place, which I think is super cool. All right, guys. So eventually you're going to hit a point where you're going to get taxable dividends, right? Taxable dividends across the board here, as you can see from year 7 all the way to year 20. But at the end of it all, after 20 years of doing this strategy, okay, you're going to be left with the end value, end value. Remember, end value alone, end value of 1.4 million. Phenomenal stuff from an initial value of 500K while paying yourself out every single year. And let's look at what that is. Let's look at that final performance. So end balance, $1.4 million after 20 years, but total income generated in that time, $2.9 million, guys, $2.9 million for a total return of 769%. Phenomenal stuff, guys. Phenomenal stuff. All right. Now let's look at the final tax bill. All right. Let's say you sold after 20 years. So your capital gain is going to be 938,000. Okay. Plus now we have to account for the return of capital, right? Because we deferred the return of capital is a deferral, right? It's a deferral on the dividends, right? So we have to account for that. We have to account for that. All right. So 625K of return of capital will have to be added in. We have a capital gains tax, right, at 15%, and adjust as you see fit on the capital gains tax or on these tax percentages for a total tax bill of $234,000 after 20 years. And I'm sure, if you're able to generate, 2.9 million while still having a $1.4 million end balance, or at the end of the day, a capital gain of 938K, I think you guys are going to be happy to pay, an end balance after all this time of 234,000 at your end at the end of it all. But of course, you can keep utilizing the fund for dividend payouts even after 20 years and whatnot. But maybe you want to sell it at that point. But this simulation allows you to understand the power of return of capital, especially for those initial years, those initial really 7 years, where you can defer those taxes, defer them out until need be. And that deferral allows you to utilize this cash flow, right, towards reinvesting, and really, it's the opportunity cost, right? You're paying tax later, but now you get to grow this investment or live on it or do whatever you want with it. Now, I do have other calculators in this that speak to what the situation if you want to account for taxes right away. So I've done that where you could future proof yourself immediately with an assumed tax rate, and I've future proofed it as well. So if you want to do taxes right off the jump, we have that. But in this case, because of the majority of the audience here is focused on return of capital and that type of tax structure, this calculator I think is more applicable for you. So I really hope this is valuable for you. I want you guys to jump in here and test it out. I think it's really exciting to see the power of it and really what can happen with just a 500K investment. Now, of course, again, I want to stress that these are higher risk investments, and this is not for everyone. But the power here is you get the combination of a great income today, future proofing yourself with reinvested dividends for tomorrow, accounting for the inflation, understanding your taxes in a lot better way. And I've never seen a calculator that really accounts for return of capital the way we're doing here today. As a bit of a side note, guys, I saw a great promotion and I wanted to share it. You can get $15 in Bitcoin by using my link in the description below. If you trade $100 on Gemini, you can grab $15 in free Bitcoin. And Gemini is a super secure, lower fee, great platform to get exposure to cryptocurrencies. So if you are in the market for crypto and you want to get involved, I think Gemini is a great place. They also have a really phenomenal credit card, which can give you up to 4% cash back in the form of Bitcoin, which is really intriguing. And also, they just went public. They just launched an IPO. So if you want $15 in Bitcoin, grab the link below in my description and sign up. If you made it this far, I can't thank you enough for watching the full video. I really do hope the Google Sheets is helpful. I haven't seen anything else that accounts for return of capital the way this Google Sheet does. And guys, let me know if you have any other edits to the Google Sheets. I will look to edit them. If you guys see any edits outside of that, guys, please sub to the channel, comment below, and all the best, and cheers.